And welcome back to Waaaghtaktiks. We're back with the downfall of the green tide, or so we're being told, right? So today we're going to look at the Orks and the state of the faction, looking at how they're doing with their win rates, how their X and O's or X and ones are looking overall, be happy or sad about possibilities with the data slate, and looking at so much more. So welcome back to Waaaghtaktiks. But of course, today let's give a shout out to our sponsor, the Baron of Dice, as the Baron of Dice allowed us to do our paying competition. So thank you for that. And that allows us to do so much more. So check them out in the description for 5% off. And thank you to everybody who's been supporting. It's been noticed. So it means a lot. Thank you very much. And of course, check out the paying competition because that is going. And there's a lot of opportunity to win. So of course, let's get back to the stats and the facts. So here we have the Orks. We have 34 Ork players as of this weekend. 40% win rate, 46% win rate. I think that's in the last 8 weeks, I believe. We have one Green Tide player going X and 1 and one Bully Boy player going X and 1. If the chat's hot, if we got the WAAAGH energy, I'll show you an Ork list that also in 4-on-1 last week that I thought was pretty cheeky. As for the title of this video, why is it worded the way it is? Well, it's because Meta Monday himself has finally spoken, and he's taken notice of the Orks. As pretty much he says, the Orks had a rotten weekend with a 40% win rate, only 2 top placings. They seem to be headed in the wrong direction. So, you know, Meta Monday, for the most part, does come to be a voice of reason or a general consensus among the 40K community. Therefore, if he's saying it, people will start perceiving it. What do I think about that? I think some of the best factions in the game are some of our hardest matchups. Some, you know, questionable matchups we do quite well into. So it's kind of swingy depending on who you are, what terrain you lay out, you play out and such, and a bunch more. So today we're going to look at those Ork players that went X and 1. I actually do have some notes from the Green Tide player because my boy Jinmazing from the Waaaghtaktiks itself also did very well with the Green Tide. He's the person. So let's get into the players of this weekend. Sorry, I pulled the wrong stat up. Boom. So first we're going to start off with the Bully Boyz. And shout out to all you guys in chat. Whoa! Right, I see y'all. Don't worry. This is live. I'm paying attention. You guys say what you got to say. I'll be engaged. So we're looking at the Bully Boyz today. My boy, Mr. Tim Sunderland, went 4-1 with a Gonghammer. So we have, for characters, a basic mech, triple war bosses, war boss and mega armor with the teleporter. I actually appreciate this. And yeah, you didn't get it wrong, guys. I can pull it up on BCP if any of you guys doubt me in chat. He didn't have any more than one war boss and mega armor as the characters. And the reason for that is because you have to remember, in Bully Boyz, the only people who have strats are knobs and mega knobs. Guess what one of those strats is? Full rerolls to hit during the WAAAGH. Therefore, your Bully Boyz that don't have characters can simply go out during the initial WAAAGH, maybe even during the second WAAAGH, and they can kind of get stuck in, look for a trade, look for skirmishes, look for investments, or even just reliably do their job, as they're not as dependent on the +1 to hit from the War Boss and Mega Armor. I would say the War Boss's Mega Armor's output is a bit underwhelming at times, considering that he doesn't re-roll wounds, he doesn't have AP -3, and he's low volume of punches, being at only 5 during the wall. So you don't necessarily always need him to finally get your target going, but his point value of staying at 175 for 5 mega knobs with the 5 of feel no pain and all the durability capability you can get access to, that makes it so like the enemy has to go, right? It has to go into them. So clearly he was using those in that kind of way, and it's worked out. A lot of the time I call the War Boss and Mega Armor with the teleporter, the QRF. What do I mean by that? Quick response force is what that means, meaning a lot of the time he's your reactionary kind of where you're putting him in as an ingress, especially if you're going second. Second is our weakness as an Ork player. If you're War Horde, you're just sad going second. If you're Dread Mob, you can see it as I'm going second, it's a defensive wall. If you're Bully Boyz, you see it as I now have a great ingress target or option, because your mega knobs have a capability to ingress going second, right? You have to look at what are your options, and that's something that Bully Boyz gets as an advantage, I guess, to a degree. 2 10-man units of boys, followed by 2 basic trucks, 2 battle wagons, both with art cases, a 10-man unit of flash gits, 2 11-man unit of Gretchen, 3 by 5 mega knob units, all with twin kill saws, and then 1 big man unit of knobs with power claws, followed by 2 5-man units of storm boys. So these war bosses are just going up in boy units, followed by just one big brick of knob power claw punching. We don't see infiltration and or scouting, something to keep in mind here. So let's take a look at my boy's path to victory. Did end up getting 11th. He lost his third game. I don't have notes on this get right here, but let's take a look at his path to victory. So as for his first game, we have the Blood Angels with the Liberator Assault group. Some people see this as a very difficult matchup for the Orks to deal with, or just other melee armies. Depends if you have access to fight on death. Gaz incorrect for bullies? No, he's not incorrect. You know, he's not incorrect, and I'm someone on the fence about it too. So in this matchup, we have Liberator Assault group with Astroth, Blood Angels Captain with Rage Fuel Warrior, Mephiston Judiciar, and then a Sanguinor. So most of these Blood Angels lists do get pretty character heavy. Just so you know, Blood Angels just feel heavy. That's why Fight on Death matters so much. You have 2 units of Assault Intercessors just on foot with 2 Impulsors, a big brick of Blade Guard veterans, possibly for Judiciar, a Death Company unit with Jump Pack, a 3-man unit of Eradicators with another 3-man unit of Eradicators, Infiltrators, 2 3-man unit of Sanguinary Guard. Sanguinary Guard, followed by a Scout Squad and a Caladius. So normally Orks do find the Sanguinary Guard to be quite annoying to deal with. They still have Armor of Contempt, -1 to hit, -1 to wound if they're being led by a leader, and they have a 2-up base armor save. Yet, if you're dealing with Mega Knobs, you're like, cool story, bro, cool story. Because you're looking to reroll wounds anyways, and you're looking to reroll hits with one of those units anyways. So if you do get into your Sanguinary Guard, and this is one of those units that would try to go into your Mega Knob unit without a leader, possibly to try to dig them out. And there's a chance your Mega Knobs just survive as well from Feel No Pains, or because they actually get some armor save. So it could be pretty cheeky. Like to see it. Death Company Marines, another unit that once they get stuck in, the Bully Boyz can actually countercharge quite well. Not as many elite Sanguinary Guard units. You do have to be a smart Ork player because this guy did only get a 61-point win. So he was playing kind of defensively, cagey. You got to set traps. You got to take advantage of our transports because they can't really, pop them at range. As when we looked at the, clicked on list. As we looked at, the Blood Angels list, he didn't have anything to pop something like battle wagons at range. Eradicators kind of have to close the distance to kind of get you, so you can kind of dictate terms and almost predict when these things are going to get engaged with and what's going to be available for countercharging. So keep that in mind as an Ork player. Your trucks are your advantages. You're fighting on death and your trucks or wagons, right? Transports. People underestimate our transports, my boys. So we go on to the second. What'd you miss? We missed who's going hard in the wall, right? So is the second matchup, we have the Adeptus Mechanicus Skitarii cohort. Typically, this would not be on paper a great matchup for Bully Boyz because they have a lot of OC and a good amount of size body units. Keep in mind, this list does have 2 10-man units of boys led by a war boss. Good volume right there going into any of these Adeptus Mechanicus units, right? For damage 1. So we have Skitarii, and they're not as crazy investments. Skitarii, Technology Archaeologist, 2 units of Rangers, and then 2 units of Vanguard. So I believe Rangers have sticky, and then the Vanguards have like anti 4+ infantry weapons. Dune Stalker Rider for the transport. Onager Dune Crawler, and then a unit of Sterilizers, followed by 1 unit of Raiders, Infiltrators, Ruststalkers, 2 units of Disintegrators, and then a Canis Rex. I was wondering why I didn't have like they have a, this vehicle right here, the Disintegrators. It's actually respectable multi-damage profiles here. So I was like, okay, looking like he's getting kind of gunline heavy, and he did. So he went full for the Canis Rex to kind of end it off. Love to see it. Not really. He does have to play this in a sense of all these Rangers and Sterilizers and Raiders are going to be kind of like the units that get in your way as Canis Rex and the Disintegrators disintegrate you. So Bully Boyz feels really good because you're kind of just running into them, so destroying that first initial front line, because you do have flash kits as well, which you love to see. Battle wagons do make good charges for running over something like Skitarii. And then once your wagon starts getting destroyed, your first wave of stuff that went in got punched up, that's when your mega knobs come in, your QRF response unit comes in, and they kind of get stuck in with everything else. Killing cannons isn't so linear here. So that does take some, being cheeky, or maybe even just killing everything else, as you don't have the guy's potential here to just one-shot him. And Bully Boyz, for being called Bully Boyz, doesn't really throttle into one target too hard, other than you get to re-roll hits, right? Other than that, you can maybe throw a grenade at something. You can mortal wound impact charge with the knobs, for example, but they're not wounding a Canis very well. So you do have to still be intelligent with these sort of matchups. Love to see when someone can override that. I'm sure the boys being able to run up and just start punching up screens and not being so expensive investment to do that, and the flash gets felt good because then they got invested in, then all the Bully Boyz were able to get in. Yeah, so I like to see that. Love to see that, because typically you're like, who Canis Rex? Here's where he took his loss, though, and we're going to see a pattern here today. I'll let you guess who he lost to. If you listen to Stat Checks recently, when he talked about the faction letter, you're going to have an idea of who he lost to. Ready? 1, 2, 3. He lost to the Adept. Gene Stealer Call. I hyped that up just to say the name wrong. Gene Stealer Call. I'll give you a hint. This is not going to be the last time you see Gene Stealers taking a dub from one of our Ork players this weekend, last weekend. So Gene Stealers are something you might have to be become aware of. So we're going to talk about some of this today. We have 2 units of abominants. This is what this is kind of what their equivalent is to like knobs with power claws. I'll show you their data sheet in a little second here. We have a Biophagus, Clamavis, 2 Kelomorphs, a Patriarch, which is essentially like a pure strain Broodlord, just a Broodlord essentially, a Sanctus, followed by their version of Battle Line. So one's with auto pistols, hand flamers, and then hybrids. I do have their data sheets. I'll show you. Don't get angry yet. You never get angry. We got Goliath Truck, 2 Aberrant bricks, Aberrant units. One is a brick and one's a 5-man unit. 2 individual Achilles Ridge Runners, because they can be brought in duos, so you can bring 2 of them in a unit. Adelan Jackal unit, Goliath Rock Grinder, a hybrid Metamorph unit, 2 units of Pure Stain Gene Stealers, one of them being a 10-man brick. So these guys, a lot of the time with these Pure Strains, they're going to just jump in right at you because they scout ahead. The Gene Stealer player knows that they're going to die right away, but they're going to put you in position so that they can bring stuff in from reserve, so they can throw their vehicles up in your face, and they can really just stage up on you. And then once they're dead, there's a chance that they can cycle, get back into the program. As for their profiles, right? Something that I caught my attention as an Ork player. Pull this up real quick. Looking at something like this hybrid Metamorph. Typically, when I'm thinking of a Gene Stealer unit, I'm thinking, you are a T3 piece of poop. Goes to show, even for I believe this is a 70-point unit, they're actually T4. They're actually T4. Oh, actually, no. This is the hybrid unit, because I pulled them up as well. This is this not battle line unit. So this is what this unique Metamorph hybrid unit is. What I would say is this is still caught me off guard with their ability, where I just throw a data sheet. I just threw it somewhere. There it is. Right. So this unit has a 5-up Feel No Pain, and it actually scouts, as you can see there. It actually gets a Blood Surge, and then it brings models back into the unit. If the unit is on an objective, it brings 3 models back. So you can get more regenning on top of the fact that the unit itself dies and comes back to life. Is it very killy? Not necessarily, but Gene Stealers are known for kind of just jumping you. It's a combined arms factor where they're going to jump you with other units as well. They kind of all dogpile in. A little bit of like the Astra Militarum feel right there, right? Where it's a death by 1,000 paper cuts. That's how they feel. And then they also have, mind you, that's T4, but this is their Acolyte Hybrid. So this is actually their battle line unit. That's what I meant to pull up earlier, but it's fine. Acolyte Hybrids. And these guys, just being a base little piece of poop unit, T4 as well. Not anything else on top of that for durability stats. But the point is you catch my grift that they're not just simply T3 stuff. Even the unit of boys doesn't necessarily walk through it too easily. We do have, and then this is they reroll 1s, or they reroll if you're on an objective. So they do have hand flamers for that, and then they too get to bring guys back to life. So you see this pattern consistently. They do have random, piddling fire, but it does wear on you eventually, as we'll see with the other matchups today, because they have hand flamers. They also, and mind you, they're re-rolling wounds of 1, and if you're on an objective, they're re-rolling the entire wound roll, so that adds up. Not to mention that they have the demolition charges, and if they're coming off a table ledge and they shoot at you, of course, they get sustain, ignore, cover as well. Doesn't apply too much for their hand flamers, but for the demo charges and stuff like that. And then we have, yeah, and if they do bring guys back, they don't get to bring back their one-shot weapons, mind you. So that's 2 of their just basic battle line. They're going through a battle line, an elite unit. We're not going to go through every single Genestealer unit because we're going to do this a bit more today as well. But they do have also this, my boy here on the screen. We have a Keller morph. He's kind of like annoying, a little bit of Overwatchy type guy, but within 12 inches, once per turn, if you move within 12 inches of this guy, he will shoot you, and then he will make a move up to D6. And he's a lone operative. And then after he shoots you, you must take a battle shock test, which, of course, if you're an Ork player, you know, battle shock test can really mess us up sometimes on timing, right? So you can see this death by paper cuts where they're kind of doing a little bit of making battle shots, taking flamer watch to you, doing the initiative UNUs to hold you back as an Ork player. And then last but not least, they have aberrants, which are their version of, you know, a mixture of mega knobs and knobs, how we would see them. They have a feel no pain, but they also hit hard. Their character, their leader character, when he dies, he comes back to life and he stands back up, kind of like a Necron, for example. These guys don't have good armor, but they do have feel no pains with like 4 wounds of pop. Did I pull their data sheet? No. And then they have other characters, but we'll look at them in a second. Point is, you do need to start doing some homework on the Genestealers, as they do just have the volume of fire to chew through your base infantry, a good amount of OC. They keep the pressure on you if they could put you on the back foot. So when I pointed out the beginning of this, hey, he doesn't have infiltrators or scouts, you know, this is one of those matchups where it will shine and it will show through, because the Genestealers can just run up on you, get in the way of your trucks, get in the way of your wagons, or if you have anything on foot that's soft that they can charge into, they will and make up that space. Keep in mind, Genestealers are multi-wound as well, so things that you can't just shoot them with your battle wagon, essentially, right? There's a chance they'll still survive. So these are just all these little assets you have to start investing into as an Ork player, messing up your positioning, messing up your momentum, and then they just keep you back in your deployment zone. So get familiar with Genestealers. Whenever you're going into another type of horde, Xeno, attrition for bodies type of army, take the initiative from them as an Ork player. He did lose it, but, you know, put up a fight. Then we go into his 4th game. He went to Tau, very close for this one to be a win. You can see he got a 51 points in this one. So keep in mind, Ork players, you can win against Tau. You got to do your homework. You got to have the right mission sometimes. So we have Tau Monka. So we have 3 Cadre Fireblades and a Dark Strider. Nice and simple. 3 units of Breachers, 3 Devilfish. I love how, love/hate, right? I respect when armies bring transports, take up the board, you know, and then disembark a lot of OC and body. You know, that helps kind of set the tone, set the pace. And you hate it when people can do it to you as an Ork player. Then we have a Broadside unit, 2 units of Pathfinders, 2 individual little piranhas. Love little piranhas. They're just like kind of weird where they can make you take battle shocks as well. Hate that as Ork players, especially because it could be on our turn. We have, oh no, it's not our turn. It's on their movement turn phase, I believe. Then we have 3 individual Riptides, well known throughout all of Tau, and then 3 units of Stealth. Again, we have the Infiltrators. So we have Infiltrating and Scout again. Our boy did overcome this. He was able to, you know, a lot of the time with Tau, it comes to, did you go first? Did you close the distance on them before turn 3? And did they do well enough to block you? Were you able to make good pile-ins and charge through, charge and touch their tanks and kind of occupy lanes and score secondaries much? It's easier said than done, right? There's always a lot of context of the Tau games. Just keep in mind, it becomes harder if you don't have infiltrating, you know, and scout type units, guys. Something that I really want to get you across, that in the meta, especially the higher you go, especially into GTs and such like that, you're going to run into that right off the bat at some point on day 1, I assume, really, in the first 3 games. So then we go into his, he did pull that out though. Great freaking job, Tim. Then on his 5th matchup, he went into Blood Angels again. But this is the Iron Storm. So if you guys are familiar, you know, Iron Storm, Blood Angels, we're bringing on them flavors probably. So we have Lamarties, Tech Marine, and then a Sanguinor. 2 Ball Predators. You know, their Ball Flamer is respectable. It's like kind of like a little Land Raider Redeemer Flamer. a unit of Death Company, Jump Pack, 2 Lancers, Infiltrator, 2 ATVs, 2 Predator Destructors, a Vindicator, and a Cladius Assassin. Vindicators are absolutely annoying and very potent into Orks. We like when people only bring one. We really do. We really care when they only bring one. A lot of the time, you know, we are happy when you have Mega Knobs, you have good AP, you have re-rolling wounds and good strength, so you can run right through this. Don't hate this matchup at all. So he said 10 Death Company, 7 tanks, and some 4 lone ops, 1 dream. Yeah, that's not a good matchup for, you know, going into Bully Boyz. So 86-point win right there for Mr. Tim Sunderland. Let's take a look at his list one more time. So we have a simple mech. Something I did want to pull this up, and I went right over my head when I was looking at the rest of this list. Excuse me. The individual mech. What the heck is he doing on this list? Keep in mind your battle wagons and, of course, your truck have firing deck, and you can just take advantage of the fact that your flash gets will still be able to use sustain, and you can get some good shooting out from these units, which the enemy most likely wouldn't expect. You get your lone op, so you can do secondaries as well. I like to see that people are still integrating a lone op, but they're not paying for Snick Route, which we're talking about in our next matchup about Snick Route. But nonetheless, always having these scoring little tech pieces, and if you haven't learned or figured out what's going on with mechs, check out some of the videos because we broke that down several times on how to use that. But you can see it's still being continued to use constantly here and there, trickling in on some of these lists we go over. We're bringing a solo mech, even 1 or 2, so you can take advantage of firing deck and have multi-phase potential where you're not just sitting around in Bully Boyz or War Horde and just running into everything, where you can just shoot stuff. Really helps a lot. So great job there. I like that you integrated that. Like that you integrated the flash kits. So shout out to Tim Sunderland. Whoa! For the Bully Boyz making this shake up. When everybody was in doubt, the Bully Boyz still showed out. So now we move on to the Green Tide, as it's the rise of the Green Tide, as I like to say. And of course, near and dear to my heart, we have channel supporter Edwin Cho. So Edwin Cho actually popped up and he gave me some notes. He's also in the chat. So shout out to Jimenez or Jin Mazing. Sorry, there we go. It's in Jin Mazing. I thought he was Mexican. No, I'm just kidding. So let me pull up this real quick. But so we have his Green Tide list. So real quick, we have Boss Snickrot, triple Pain Boys, triple War Bosses. We have a Bloodthirsty Belligerence on the Pain Boy. We have Ferocious Show Off on a War Boss. And then we have Brutal But Cunning on the Weird Boy. We have 5 20-man units of boys, 1 truck, 1 brick of flashy gets, 2 10-man units of grots, a unit of commandos, and then 2 units of storm boys. We out here, boys. We out here. Keep in mind, it is nice when you have just 1 independently vehicle, sometimes on your Green Tide list, not just to keep your flash gets safe, but if they do pull, bring it down, you go ahead and hide that boy, and they can't recycle it for free. So very fun there. And then we see he's, been sticking to his tactics. He brought them Kommandos. He does say that Kommandos do matter in several of these matchups when we go over the notes. So love to see that. I'm just clearing some of these these tabs here, my boys. There we go. And he did also say that he decided to just bring 5 units of boys, but he's subject to possibly bringing more. So we'll look at his notes as I had them right here. And shout out to you, Mr. Jin Amazing, because he showed really amazing. So make sure I got this up, guys. Let's go over his win path. He got 3rd place at the Mad 40K GT, only losing his last round. And if you're paying attention, you might have an idea of who he lost to. Oops, I erased something a little too early, but that's okay, guys. It won't mess everything up, I promise. Here we go. So going over his win path for his first game, we have the Tyranids. So Tyranids be slept on, boys. Let's go over his list, and then I'll go over his notes. Try to keep that pattern so I'm not all over the place. So we have Hive Tyrant, Neuro Tyrant, Swarm Lord. Neuro Tyrants everywhere, my boys. Get familiar. We have a Hormigaunt, Biovore, Exocrine, 2 units of Harl Specs. Crazy cheap for a monster, right, guys? Right? Ork players, you respect how cheap that is. A Malice, 2 units of Maliceptors. We hate these boys. -1 to hit auras. It can be -1 to wound even. It can end up being that way. And they have respectable psychic shooting, right? A Neurolictor, they will try to stack this, right? Whenever someone has a Neurolictor on list, keep in mind, they're going to take the Battle Shock. The Neuro Tyrant makes it -1. And then the Neurolictor, if you're within range of him, I believe he's another -1. And then I think if you're within another synapse unit, it's another -1. So I can stack up to 2 and 3 on that Shadow of the Warp when they pop Shadow of the Warp. And then if you fail within of the Neurolictor range, then you're now +1 to wound against you and everything targets you. So what I mean by that is you have a Battle Wagon, your Battle Wagon takes a Battle Shock test within range of the Neurolictor. Everything against the Battle Wagon is now +1 to wound. So typically the Exocrine can't hurt them. The Battle Wagon too well, now you can hurt them. Then we have 2 units of Tyrannofexes. They both have Rupture Cannon. So if they didn't hurt the Exocrines, didn't hurt them, then these guys would. But there are no Exocrines on this list, right? No. Oh, there were. Of course there are. But technically I'm saying there's one. And then followed by 1 unit of Tyrant Guard. Very interesting to see that. And I'm going to go ahead and actually say that the Tyrant Guard went right up here on the Neuro Tyrant. Not for sure about that. They do give the unit a 5-up Fionno Pain to kind of keep him alive. So he can kind of stand in the open and give his range out. Or maybe he went on Swarm Lord. Not necessarily sure on that. But we do have the notes real quick. So he said this was round 1, mission 0, Terraform, Stalwart, and then Crucible of Battle on layout 1. And it was Invasion Fleet. And he hinted it was Monster Mash. This ended up being a 77 to 78 victory for Mr. Edwin. He said it was an extreme nail biter. He said he went first, which ended up being a big deal. He said he got lucky that their precision ended up whiffing. And he's saying that he ended up getting lucky that by the time they pulled out Call the Horde, I called that out. He said, then my luck ran out by round 3 when they pulled Call the Horde and did a 15-point swing. So things were looking pretty good in the beginning, and then things got whiffed as soon as Call the Horde ended up coming. One thing he did say, guys, that I will point out to you right now if you're wondering, no one took fixed against Edwin at this event. Other green tide lists we've covered, people took fixed. So you can't just think it's not going to happen. Just it's not always going to happen. So at this time, he did pull it, though, at the wrong time. And that secondary made the game super close. He said he's glad he took 2x5 in Kommandos to pull off the secondaries. He said Kommandos were clutch for scoring turn 1 area denial. And the enemy in the end game came out to scoring secondaries at the final turn when they both had 2 to 4 units left. So pretty much having an early game presence with the Kommandos and having speed from the Storm Boys helped to retain the secondaries as all his monsters got stuck in and so slowly kind of eaten up. Keep in mind, guys, that, because we cannot do fixed ourselves so easily with our Green Tide army, we do rely on everything else to score the secondaries for us while our boys kind of hold the line, literally, because they can't do, clowns with their pistols and stuff like that anymore. It becomes problematic. So that's why he decided to bring Snagga out. But I do have notes on all these units, trust me, at the end when we'll go over this. Then we go to his second matchup. So remember, he only won by 1 point, so it's already getting nail biter. But next ones, we got we got 2 100s in a row. So let's look at his second game. So we go into his second matchup, which is against Adeptus Mechanicus. So we have Cybernetica Datasmith, 2 Marshals, a Tech Priest Engine Zero, and then 2 Techno Archaeologists. We have 2 units of Rangers, and then 2 units of Vanguard. Sorry, I know I got a hiccup for no reason. This does mean they have Sticky from the Rangers, and they have anti-4+ from the Vanguard. A little bit of small arms fire, right? It adds up because it's on 4+. Some Skitarii Stalkers, which I believe are their jetpack, winged guys, essentially jetpack. We have 2 units of Skitarii Infiltrators, which are like their melee kind of T4 2 wound guys. They're respectable fighting. And then they also have Rust Stalkers, which are another version of Infiltrator fighting guys, right? These guys have taser nodes, and then these guys have blades. Followed by a 4-man unit of Castellan robots. Okay, one thing I'll say, these guys are overpriced. They do work if the Adeptus Mechanicus person's on his P's and Q's and knows how to stack their buffs. But very expensive unit. 1, 2, 3 Scorpius Disintegrators. Very efficient profiles right here. Maybe I'll pull these guys aside before this is over so we can take a look at them, if I can get to it. And then 2 units of Scorpius Dune Riders, right? So he does have volume of fire. I would say, he does have a lot of different units that can give him fire, but he doesn't have necessarily the exact proper types of volume of fire, I would say, because these Disintegrators are more like elite infantry with a little bit of leftover shooting. There's not like a lot of sustained stacking going on here from what I'm familiar with either from this list. And the Adeptus mechanic is kind of like wants to jump you with multiple units to take one down. This guy just doesn't have enough stuff when it comes down to Edwin's game plan, because Edwin said he went first. So in this matchup, he said it was a total blowout because of our aggressive deployments. So it was round 2, Mission J, linchpin, raise banners, and search and destroy. Oof. So you right on top of him. So he said they both aggressively, just deployed. So he activated turn one WAAAGH as you went first, getting 30 boys and a war boss into his deployment, followed by commandos and a storm boys unit with just some high advances, just enough to make the charges he did and lock up his army. Made him fall back with 2/3 of his disintegrators, so that means he was able to touch those vehicles that actually did have somewhat nasty firepower into him. Then he had to disembark. So he took a gamble by by deploying aggressively, and it paid off. He took a lot of saves on his Castell and robots, but he ended up conceding round 3 because he was just dog walked into his deployment. So shout out there, dude. Sometimes, especially, you got to play to your strength. If you're playing Green Tide, don't really be scared and just straight up run into people, especially when you're playing that corner deployment. Sometimes let me pull that. Oop, there we go. I was too aggressive there. Sweet. So shout out to that 100-point victory to my boy. So he's going in hot already. 78 close one, then a 100 point. So that must feel really good because you won the close battle, and then you had a dog walk the second one. So let's see his round 3. So his round 3, he ended up getting another 100 win, right? Sorry. What the heck am I pulling up there? Sorry, guys. Fat finger. Yeah, so round 3, another 100-point win where he went into me pressing the wrong list. There we go. Went into Synaptic Nexus. So, hey, Nexus. So Nexus is the version of Tyranids where they can kind of like declare doctrine, so they can choose a 5-up invuln for everybody. They can choose everybody gets +1 to hit, and then they can choose everybody is +1 to advance and charge. Some weirdness like that. So we have and they have Armor of Contempt as a stratagem and some other stuff. So we have Death Leaper, Neuro Tyrant, and then Winged Hive Tyrant, followed by a Harrowspex, a Lictor, Maliceptors, 2 Neurolictors. So keep in mind, still get the ability to, when you take Battle Shock, there's -2 going on. Then if you fail it, this guy gives the whole army +1 wound against you. A Norn Emissary. We know that boy's durable, especially in this one, right? Because he has access to Armor of Contempt with his 2-up armor save and his 5-up Feel No Pain. A Psychophage, which has a 5-up Feel No Pain on its own and then gives 6-up Feel No Pain anything within range of it. 2 Screamer Killers, so they could be getting Feel No Pains from the Psychophage. And then a Tyrannofex with a Rupture Cannon, followed by a Zonothropes, which were being most likely led by this Neural Tyrants, right? So he can give them +1 to hit. So they're moving around, they're at shooting quite well. And so this is what my boy has to go into, and his notes are mission 3. So round 3, excuse me. He had mission D, Scorched Earth, Swift Action, Tipping Point. He said this was layout 6. Tyranid player went first. This match was interesting. He moved the Norn into the middle with turn 1 and the Screamer Killers on the sides. I was able to pull off long charges turn 1 and counterpunch it with the WAAAGH turn 2. He said he got insanely lucky. Can't count on luck, but luck counts. Because he ended up rolling 9 pluses on his battle shocks during Shadow of the Warp. He said that was even with the -2, -3 on the key units. So I've been warning you about that. Trust me, Ork players, you know how it's terrifying because you want those strats a lot. You want that OC. So he said on those key units, allow me to maintain points because the primary and such. His list only had 1 Maliceptor and only 1 Norn. So he was able to wrap his monsters and then they could not fall back. But he did let his boys massacre. Oh, yeah. So he could not fall back and let him massacre his boys with the Zoanthropes, because keep in mind the Zoanthropes have Blast. So they are the most potent thing on this list to go up against. By round 4, he was super far ahead on primary. So then ended up talking it out, leading to him getting a 100-point to about 23-point victory here by Mr. Edwin. So my boy just played it aggressively again. It's one of those things where you can't overthink it when you're playing something like you're Green Tide. You're ready a stat check. You are ready I just punt a bunch, dumb amount of bodies just running up on you. Do your thing, right? At some point, it's just a dice game. You got to let the dice ride. but it's up to you to be in position where you're supposed to be. And he was right there where he needed to be. He was right, ended up going for the charges, making the charges, and pulling off the wall turn 2. Love to see it. And now we go into his game 4. So for his game 4, he ended up going into Tyranids again, but this time it was Invasion Fleet. So that knows, right? My boy's into so many Tyranids, guys. If you're going to events, expect to go against Tyranids and Necrons and some version of Space Marines, probably. So we have Invasion Fleet base. We got the basics, back to the basics again. We got double Broodlord, and then a Hive Tyrant, followed by 2 units of Gargoyles, a unit of Hormagaunts, Biovores, 2 Exocrines, 2 units of 10 Genestealers, a Lictor, 1 Maleceptor, excuse me, 1 Tyrannofex with Rupture Cannon, and then 2 6-man units of Von Ryan Leapers. Those guys got way better now that they're like +1 strength on the charge. Sorry, +1 strength because synaptic. So they can actually get stuck in and beat you up. Genestealers, of course, they get the scout, run up into you, and then do devastating ones, I believe, because the Broodlord gives that to them. Not to mention the Gargoyles get to shoot, and move, and then shoot and taking space, even stealing primaries if they end up doing it later in the game. So he has firepower and he has board control, which means you definitely probably need your commandos. So let's see what my boy had to say. So he said, round 4, mission I, Burden of Trust. Prepared positions and search and destroy. Hey, shout out to prepared positions, right? He said, Tyranids again. He won the deployment and he won going first. He put in parentheses, which were keys to victory. He said, the whole point of the list was obviously to lock me and my deployment. Therefore, the commandos were the MVPs. By being able to deploy first, he was able to string his commandos all along and just completely stop all of that scouting potential. Disgusting. We got to love it. If you haven't seen that, check out our commando videos. Locking out all the Genestealers, and he was able to guarantee that he gets to move out and stage for his turn to a wall. If he would have gone first, it would have been a totally different game. This was a good match, ending in 90-62. If the Tyranid player had drew better secondaries, it would have been closer. Genestealers did some work on the boys, and the Hive Tyrant with the Bioptic Biology was super tanky. Yeah, that sounds like the meat and potatoes, but great job there. Love to see that, because something I always advise guys when you are going into this, going to an event, be weary that you're going to need your infiltrators, and you're going to need not going to need, but you're going to really love Zod. Something I really like to go using Zod for are these kind of matchups where people want to be alpha striking on you and really just jump on top of you. Having Zod to just also act as another screen as you're tied or something else moves forward may be something to consider more so for us going forward. We've seen Zod everywhere. We've seen commandos everywhere, boys. Love to see it. Now, so he was a 90-point win, like we said. So my boy's doing great. 78, 100, 100, 90, boom. Now he's going into round 5. We know what's to come, but do you know what faction did it? If you were paying attention, you would know. It was the Genestealers cult again. So Genestealer cults have been messing with the Orks this weekend. Gotta smush these bug boys. So let's get a little bit of info again. We have the Benefactus, a Kommandos, a Calamorph, and then a Primus, followed by a Reductus Saboteur. This list was a lot of bodies, is what I'll start telling you guys, right? So we have multiple units. See, it was 5 units of hand flamers, followed by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 units of 20 hybrids, followed by 3 individual ridge runners, followed by 2 units of pure strain Genestealers. So it was a booty load of bodies against the Ork boys and their bodies. So luckily he gave me some notes, so I don't have to guess how this went. So going into round 5, it was layout 1, the ritual, swift action, crucible of battle. He said, I went first. This matchup wasn't as bad as I thought, but it was still rough and kind of tough. It was 120 of the hybrids and 25 acolytes. So overall, between everything, it was about 200 GSC bodies versus 100 boy bodies. He said, because, when guys come back to life and such. He said, I should have moved out more aggressively turn 1, since there won't be any deep strikes. I tried to hunker down and create objectives, which would have worked, but I did not screen properly on my own objectives, allowing a few gene stealers to get enough bodies on there to swing 10 points on primary. But he kept the game close by continuing to score. He said, against GSC, you can either hunker down or go all in. The key notes are just to stop them from dropping 3 inches onto the objectives. Other than that, you shouldn't really worry about it because there's too much already going on and there's already a lot of bodies. He said since it was a ritual, he shouldn't have worried about his home objective so much. But it was against Mr. Floofcox, I believe, who's also a great GNC player, and it was a close match. When me and him talked, me and Edwin talked about it, I said, yeah, that's one big thing that, first of all, going into GNC itself, you don't really have the game knowledge or reps into it to necessarily know what kind of commitment to do. You can have it in theory, but practicality, every table and situation might be a little different. So you're like, maybe it's the ritual, maybe I can hold out. One thing with Green Tide, this happened with John Holbrook as well. Not that I learned it just myself, but I'm seeing even great players run into this. When you're running into these other bodies, these armies that are a lot of bodies, like Guard or anything like that, and you're playing Green Tide where they're T3, T4 bodies, and your T5 bodies are more valuable, and they might even come back. You got to take over the table because they're going to be coming in off the board edges anyways. So you can't really sit there and start taking losses or letting them take position, then you countercharge them because then they're just going to be picked up anyways and put back into the mid table and then reactively start killing you again. So you just need to push them back. Again, that's why I feel Zod might be interesting. So Edwin and I were talking about that. But nonetheless, it was a great game and he did a really great job because this is a really seasoned GSE player and he had already been doing great with the Green Tide prior to going into everybody else going into this list. So he does have some final takeaways for his notes and his wrap up. He said, running Green Tide, kept hearing, dang, that's a lot of boys. He said you need to be prepared going for 5 rounds. He had tins that had every unit of boys, right? So if you had blue boys, he had a tin for them. Red boys, he had a tin for them. That way when they died, he would put them in there. He had multiple sets of dice. He had 2x36 chess dice ready to go that were different colors. And then he had 2 sets of 20 with different dice that were different colors. That way he can kind of allocate who was fighting where. He also said, keep in mind, guys, having protein bars and electrolytes made a big difference, and water instead of having soda and candy made a big difference. And he actually had a standing mat. So shout out to you for having that. The mat makes a big difference because with Tide, boy, you're just sitting there, more like standing there, just moving a lot of stuff around the whole game. He said key units were Kommandos, Storm Boys, and the Weird Boy for the jump, and of course the boys. He said sadly his flash gets underperformed this time. He's still a fan of flash kits because they're nice to have. Because the shooting and the threat of the opponents having to actually focus on them. But he didn't do as much as he wanted, does consider boys and other stuff. He said Snickrot usually shines for him, but at this tournament, he was pretty much kind of lacking because he did score for him, but also he would be giving up points as well. If he didn't draw the right cards, then Snickrot didn't really necessarily have anything to do instead of the Storm Boys who were able to kind of be active all the time. Surprisingly, no one took fix like we said against him. He said he really liked having the enhancements that he chose. He would have liked to have Ruckus Warcaller, but ultimately being able to get Feel No Pain with Brutal But Cunning and the Gretchen made it so he was always getting CP back when he needed it. Getting nice strength thresholds with the Ferocious Show-Off mattered, and Bloodthirsty Belligerence made a difference too, so you can be reliably moving around the map and such. So nonetheless, keep in mind he kept his Warlord as the Weird Boy. So shout out to Mr. Edwin Cho. Really happy that you use Kommandos and you use flash kits. Stuck to them tactics. Let me get a whoa from Mr. Edwin Cho. So shout out to you, buddy. Really happy for that. So since y'all doing good in chat, we have decent numbers and I'm feeling hyped for you guys. Shout out to Mr. Jim Jones. He says Green Tide Crumpin'. Let's go. Yeah, I know you love it. Looks like chat's going pretty hard. Shout out to you guys. Let's see what's going on. What's up, WAAAGHday? I haven't seen you in a hot minute, buddy. We're going to go over the extra credit list. So we do actually have a War Horde list that I'm going to show you for fun because I really appreciate. Oops, you know what I noticed for that Green Tide list? I didn't show necessarily more data sheets. My bad. But what I will say is I want to show this War Horde list, right? So for this War Horde list, this was actually 2 weekends ago. and they ended up going 4-1 as well. What I really liked about this list was the uniqueness of these boy bricks. So let's take a look real quick at this war horde list. We'll go over its path to victory too. But we'll do that real quick, so it won't take too long. We have a beast boss with Follow Me Lads, Gazgul Traka, 3 war bosses, Zagrat Snagga, 1 20-man unit of beast Snaggas, and then 1 20-man unit of boys. I love to see 20-man unit of beast Snaggas. People doubted me, but I'm telling you, you bring that 20-man unit of beast Snaggas, it's at the point cost where you can consider it. You definitely will consider Gaz with it, but this is definitely a good tech piece call if you're dealing with like an Avatar, if you're dealing with Khitans, if you're dealing with anything that doesn't have Armor of Contempt and a 2-up save, essentially. Oops, I almost erased him. So shout out to him for that. He has 1 truck, 2 battle wagons, both with zap guns. I like that. Just quick, rolling dice. A burner boy unit, 2 Gretchen units, a big unit of commandos with a breaching ram, rocket, and a burner and a power claw. We have only 2 mega knobs for Gazgul's bodyguards, followed by 2 5-man units of knobs and a storm boy. So I love to see that he has 2 different wagons, both for different assigned purposes and targets that they want to prioritize and kill. But the beast boss is still ready to get stuck in with that follow me, lads. So let's take a look at Ross's path to victory. He ended up getting 3rd place at Dynasty Slayer. Yeah, Dynasty. Okay. So let's do this real quick for y'all, just so we can see what he was facing with these 20-man bricks boas. We had Chaos Space Marines with Veterans of the Long War. We have Abaddon, Cypher, Warpsmith. Remember, Cypher makes you pay additional CP if you're within 12 inches of him. And then Abaddon with this nice aura of re-rolled in. We have 2 units of Legionnaires, a Land Raider, 3 units of Predator Destructors. Everyone's teching into these auto cannons. 2 units of Chosen, 1 Hellbrute, 1 Obliterator, 2 Raptors. Keep in mind that the Obliterator can do indirect fire. We really much hate to see it. And then the Hellbrute acts as an ability that he gives critical 5+ as an aura. So we have Abaddon, then we have the Hellbrute, both giving auras. So they're both giving both of those auras to the Destructors. That means these guys are going to be getting critical 5+, sustained and lethal, because you get both because of the Hellbrute. Actually, I'm not sure if you get it 5+. It might just be 6s. But nonetheless, that's the combination they're looking for here for the firing potential in the guns, and then they got a little bit of combined arms from melee. It is a potent list of firepower, but playing that kind of warhorde list of battle wagons and then boys and gas is enough pressure to just punch through the little bit of infantry you have the whole line there. Don't think it's a bad matchup for Orks, because they just want to play like kind of like Marines, just with less screens, I guess. So then we go into his second game. Make sure I have the guy's list. Right here. So he's going to Astra Militarum. We have Lord Sol Aliantis, Cole Ironhand Strachan, Ursula Creed, 2 units of command squad, science command squads, a Cadian command squad, platoon command squad, a psyker, and then a preacher. That's funny. I haven't seen a preacher. Keep in mind, Strachan's pretty dope. He does attach to Catachans and allows them to punch better. I believe he gives them lethal in combat, and he himself punches quite respectably. Psychers do give another defensive capability to any unit they're in. So we have a big brick of Death Core. They do have built-in Feel No Pain and regen of boys with their medkits. Cadians, another unit of Catachans. So you don't see as many bodies like bricks of Catachans. You don't see a bunch of 10-man units of Catachans for the scout and take up the board. That matters, guys. We have Nork Deadnog, and then 2 units of Ogren bodyguards, followed by 2 units of Bulgrin, just big bricks of Bulgrin for 220 points, followed by an Ogren, Rattling Snipers, and then 2 5-man units of Scions with 3 units of heavy weapons teams. Those are with Lascans, and 1 with mortars, and then a rapier, laser, and a Cyclone demolition vehicle. So I can see this guy was pretty much just trying to have fun and play something off the wall. There are a little bit of, things that would be really cool to see on the table here. Nonetheless, you do appreciate having Gaz in this matchup and having a ton of bodies and a ton of OC from all those bricks of boys, having our own transports to keep us safe. Luckily, it wasn't into like a gunline heavy guard list, so he did pretty much handle that with a 97-point win. Going into his third matchup, we had the Tyranid, Vanguard, Onslaught. So these guys do get advanced in charge, you know, to all of these Brood Lords that you're going to see, and probably Von Reapers and Lictors. So we have triple Brood Lord, followed by a Death Leaper, and then a Winged Hive Tyrant. 3 10-man unit Gene Stealers, a Lictor, Trigon for that 3-inch deep strike come out and just be annoying. 2 Tyrannofexes, both with ruptured cannons, and then 3 big bricks of Von Ryan Leapers with their fight first. Really just want to get in your face. You do feel better when you have Zogrot Snagga in this matchup, I will say, boys. Just having a big old umbrella screen that you can use to kind of absorb this damage, and Kommandos. Kommandos would go first. We spoke about this with Edwin showing the green tide, but being able to string along your Kommandos to stop all of the, you know, scouting and maybe even the Von Ryan Leapers, giving your Zogrot unit to act as another staging potential to act as an umbrella wave once the Kommandos get chewed up, or act as a counter charge if there's the wall and they can move 12 inches. But then you have all the boys are now freely able to move up and fight, because all of this army is pretty much based off, I just want to run right into you with all this high volume damage, which would work really, really well into Ork boys. But because you have Zod and the Kommandos, which is the combination I always do kind of advise right now in Pariah Nexus, he was able to set the pace first and probably punch first with his boys and his Snaggas, and let Gaz probably get all the way in the enemy's deployment. I wouldn't be surprised to see that at all. That's actually what I expect from that game. 90-point win there. Then we go into his 4th game. This is actually where he took his loss, and it was to the Hypercrypt Legion. You could just look in this list. I can see how this went. We have a Nightbringer, 2 units of Hexmark, 3 units of Hexmark Destroyers. These guys are lone ops, and then they get to shoot you with them when you get range of them. Really dirty. A Silent King, Immortals, Deathmarks, 2 units of Doomsday Arcs. These guys are damage 4 on their main profile, and they have 20 shots at like strength 4 with lethal. Then we have Flayed Ones. I think these guys infiltrate. Yeah, they infiltrate. Followed by 2 individual locusts, just so they can go around scoring, and then a big old fat Tesseract Volk. So at first I was like, Tesseract Volk sucks, kinda, but if you're actually an Ork, it kind of just sucks for us, because he gets to pick. Okay, thanks, thing that got in my face. Okay, he gets to pick 2 of these powers on the left for his range shooting that he can do. Guess what one of those is? It is indirect fire right here, so he can get D6 plus 3, strength 10 minus 3 indirect fire. And then he can also do cosmic fire and other weapons like that. But the whole point is that he's T12, 2 up armor save, and then 4 up invuln. Keep in mind that the Silent King, oops, that's not the list. Right here. The Silent King on this list, so he also gives the Doomsday Arc and this big boy the ability to either ignore modifiers or give them rerolls, I believe 1 to wound. So they're just getting really reliable damage off on our Ork boys. And because they're Hypercrypt, it means they can take the initiative. Of course, the Silent King can use his Minears to pretty much pop a battle wagon per turn. So there's not a lot of answers that Mr. Ross could do, considering that the Necron player, is he's smart, will just understand when the wall is going to be, keep his distance, and just pop wagons and then disembark whatever's in there and whittle it away with the rest of the fire. So hard matchup, but it was a good game because it was only 1 point because it was so low unit count that he was able to still score. I think this was the matchup right there. Yeah, matchup right there was a 1-point game. Very, very close. So even though it looks memeish, it's like, yeah, he just happens to have the tools to kill you, and you have to hope you're scoring before he kills you. It just happened 1 point difference. So could have been the other way. You could end up winning that game also. And then last but certainly not least, we have his final matchup. Where it looks like it was Space Wolves. Making sure I clicked the right thing because I looked where yeah, it was. Okay. He went into the Space Wolves, so the Leagues of Voltan. Leagues of Voltan, I think, are a little slept on. Let's say you're not familiar with like the event scene, and you watch other content creators and they're like, Leagues of Voltan suck, for example. I would say I like top table performance. They are capped. But as for their tools into Orks, you got to be a little weary. So we have Einherjar Champions, a call, followed by 2 units of these Huscar Warriors. I do like that they can break up like Combat Squad to do 5-man units, so they can go in their transports if they have enough transports. Doesn't look like. We'll see. Then we have 2 units of Brokir Thunderkin with the Graviton Blast Cannons. These guys are a little bit, T6, 3 wounds a pop. don't necessarily get picked up for 3-man units. 3 units of berserkers. So these guys do have 5-up, feel no pains. They do hit on 4s with their punches, but they're all quite respectable punches and good mass. They do have a indirect fire weapon that if it does hit you, it can get a reduced movement on you as an orc player. So be aware of that. You don't want to necessarily let them hit you with that. A lot of the time they're advancing though, so they won't shoot it, but keep it in mind, it is a thing. 1 big brick of Terminators. These guys are horrific into your boys unit. So they'll give your boys unit a grudging. So they'll be +1 to hit, +1 to wound. And then these guys will drop down. They will use their grenade launchers that are blast. They'll use sustain 2. And then they'll just shoot in you with sustain 2 with +1 to wound. And just put a ridiculous amount of damage into your, like, volume of damage 1 into your boys. And they can pick up 20-man unit of boys. We have Hearthkin, which is their version of Kommandos, just infiltrators. They get a reactive move. That's the one big thing to keep on them. Reactive move. And then 2 units of Pioneers. These guys play the table edges constantly. If they give you the Pioneers, kill those freaking Pioneers. If they give you the Pioneers, kill those Pioneers. We do see that he does have zap guns on here. Not that you're necessarily going to always hit them, right, on there, but the zap gun, pop, boom, pops one of those boys immediately. If you get lucky, it's worth just taking the shot. For each one you kill, they get a good volume of fire, but these guys are their scoring potential on their list. So once you start killing them, they have to start using stuff like Sagittars, and that's all they got left. So in this regard, they have 5 Sagittars. These guys have a bunch of scouting. They have all right firepower. They got like a good, like, big beam on top, and then they have just kind of piddling fire on the side. Point is, when everything's +1 to wound and +1 to hit from being grudging that it's shooting at, it does better than it thought. It's T10. But having Kommandos and Zod, boom, boom, like I keep saying, makes a huge difference. Having Kommandos makes it so you can at least pressure one side of the table with your Zod and stage up. Sure, they can move with their Jaegers and then scout behind the Jaegers, but now they're all positioned on one side of the table where you know exactly where they're at, and then you're staged up safely on one side of the table. That when you call the wall, Zod can cover 12 inches. Kommandos can go touch stuff because they can't get Overwatch really nicely. And then the rest of your army still gets them stuck in and punches them up. On the other side, because you just punch through them, as you're not really worried. These guys don't carry a bunch of screens. Jaegers is really out. They do have those warriors, but they're going to use, one of those guys stay at their home, and then the other guys are all kind of just in transports, and they're not really killing you. So they usually run out of momentum. A lot of the time, their only true reliable killing is their big break of Termies. So shout out to Ross for that one. Great job taking out the Leagues of Voltan. You just got to get stuck in on those boys, really. You just got to get stuck in. They're kind of slow. Punch right through them. They're definitely respectable, but treat them like you treat anybody else that's wearing power armor. And get stuck in, lads. So great job of Mr. Ross James with his double battle wagon, 2 20-man units of battle line, but one is a beast Snagga and one is a boy. Of course, we still do have the beast boss, followed by the double hitter quitters of the infiltrator and scout with Zagra, Wartsnagga, and the Kommandos. So, of course, check out if you can check our videos on that so you can get stuck in and learn how to do that. But great performance by Mr. Ross James. And the War Horde never comes in last. I just said that. I don't know if that's true, so don't quote me. But whoa, so shout out to everybody for that one. I think Orks maybe be looked down on by other people in the meta as a whole. I think there's more context in that. When we looked at these lists and where people ended up, what ended up near them in these top performances were generally Death Guard, GSC, Astra Militarum, some iteration of Space Marine, and then Necrons, right? 4 of these matchups that I just mentioned, excluding Marines, are difficult for Orks, regularly. They do have the tools to pop our vehicles. They do have uppy downy, so we can't get and interact with them. They score quite well, or they trade bodies. They have a bunch of screening, but then with combined arms factor of shooting and then countercharging you a little bit with random stuff. So I just advise that Ork players understand what's at the top of meta and know that we do have tools into it, but you do kind of have to really preemptively consider that. And I think some of those unit tools are Zod, Gaz, Kommandos, and just understanding the movement phase and 20-man boys, how they work as a whole. Should be happy. We have the Grotmus detachments coming up. We're going to talk about that hopefully on Friday with Red Ones Goes Faster if he is available. Also, of course, if you haven't, check out our paint competition. We don't have much submissions right now, so you're subject to win some Waaaghtaktiks dice from that at the end of the month. So check out our paint competition and check us out as a whole. We're doing our fix our lists again. So those are for channel members. You send me information, the context that I asked for of what you own, with the event you're going to, the terrain you're going to see, and what you kind of want to keep at the core of your list. And then I will fix your list live if you're a channel member, so everybody can kind of gain that set of knowledge. So we should all be pumped for Mr. Blake Cottrell for the tank busters that are coming up too, right, guys? We've seen that from the kill team. So hopefully we talk about that as well on Friday. And shout out to Mr. Blake, because he actually is a winner of our raffle from 4K, our 4K raffle. So the raffles are real, boys. You could definitely win. So, of course, get stuck in that paint competition. And there's always one thing to keep in mind. Is don't cross our wall, because we knock your teeth out. Whoa!